My name is Samantha Rodriguez, and I'm 28 years old. I never thought I'd be standing in a courthouse hallway, watching my own parents walk toward me with their lawyers, ready to destroy my life over a house I bought with my own hard-earned money. They're claiming that my beautiful Victorian home rightfully belongs to my sister Madison, based on some supposed family agreement I never knew existed. This lawsuit isn't just about property. It's the beginning of the most devastating betrayal I've ever experienced. Before we dive into this incredible story of family betrayal and legal warfare, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you're ready to hear how my own parents tried to steal my dream home, smash that like button and subscribe for more shocking family drama stories. Trust me, what happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. Working as a marketing executive at Morrison & Associates, one of San Francisco's most prestigious advertising firms, had always been my dream job. For 6 years, I poured my heart into building campaigns for luxury brands while living in a cramped studio apartment that barely fit my bed and desk. Every month, I religiously deposited 30% of my $60,000 salary into my house fund, dreaming of the day I could afford something beautiful, something that would truly be mine. The Victorian house appeared on the market on a Tuesday morning in March. Located in Napa Valley's historic Silverado neighborhood, it stood 3 stories tall with original hardwood floors, a wraparound porch adorned with intricate gingerbread trim, and windows that caught the morning sunlight like jewels. The asking price of $450,000 represented every penny I'd saved, plus a hefty mortgage, but the moment I stepped inside, I knew this was home. The realtor mentioned there were already 2 other serious buyers, but I didn't care. I'd been preparing for this moment my entire adult life. Growing up, I'd always been the responsible daughter while my sister Madison drifted through life expecting others to solve her problems. At 32, Madison had recently moved back in with our parents after her second divorce, claiming she needed time to find herself while she collected unemployment benefits. Our parents, Margaret and Robert Rodriguez, had always shown clear favoritism toward Madison, excusing her failures as temporary setbacks while holding me to impossibly high standards. When I graduated summa cum laude from UC Berkeley, they attended my sister's community college graduation the same weekend instead. When I landed my dream job, they spent dinner discussing Madison's latest boyfriend drama. The bidding war for the house lasted 3 intense days. I offered asking price immediately, but 2 other families countered with higher bids. Determined not to lose my dream home, I stretched my budget to $475,000, knowing it would mean eating ramen for months. When my realtor called with the news that my offer was accepted, I cried tears of joy in my office cubicle, not caring that my colleagues stared. Closing day arrived on a perfect Friday afternoon in April. Signing those papers felt like the most empowering moment of my life, proof that hard work and sacrifice could create something beautiful. I called my parents immediately after receiving the keys, expecting congratulations and maybe even pride. Instead, my mother's voice turned cold when I described the house's details. "That's a very expensive neighborhood, Samantha," she said icily. "I hope you haven't bitten off more than you can chew." My father remained silent on the extension, which somehow felt worse than criticism. Madison's reaction was even more disturbing. When I showed her photos at Sunday dinner the following week, she studied each image with an expression I couldn't quite read, part jealousy, part calculation. "Must be nice to have money to throw around while some of us are struggling," she said, her voice dripping with resentment. "Some of us remember what it's like to think about family before ourselves." The comment stung because I'd always been generous with family members in need, lending Madison money for her wedding, her car repairs, and her legal fees during both divorces. The warning signs escalated over the following weeks. My mother began making cryptic comments during our weekly phone calls, suggesting that some things aren't meant for everyone and that success can bring unexpected consequences. When I invited the family to see my new home, they declined with various excuses. Madison claimed she was too busy with job interviews, though her social media showed her at beaches and restaurants daily. My parents said they were concerned about the drive, though they regularly traveled twice as far to visit my aunt in Sacramento. The final red flag came during Madison's birthday party at my parents' house in May. While helping clear dishes, I overheard my mother talking quietly with my Aunt Linda about teaching Samantha some humility and making sure Madison gets what she deserves. When I asked what they meant, my mother's face flushed, and she quickly changed the subject to dessert options. That night, lying in my beautiful new bedroom with its original crown molding and bay windows overlooking the garden, I couldn't shake the feeling that something dark was brewing in my family. The legal papers were served on a Wednesday morning in June, right in the middle of our weekly staff meeting. I was presenting a campaign proposal for a major wine company when my assistant knocked and whispered that someone needed to speak with me urgently. In the hallway stood a serious-looking man in a cheap suit who handed me an envelope with my name typed on the front. "Samantha Rodriguez?" "You've been served," he announced loudly enough for my colleagues to hear through the open conference room door. My hands trembled as I read the lawsuit paperwork. Margaret Rodriguez and Robert Rodriguez versus Samantha Rodriguez, demanding immediate transfer of property located at 127 Maple Street, claiming breach of verbal family agreement and fraudulent acquisition of assets rightfully belonging to Madison Rodriguez. The legal language was dense and confusing, but the basic claim was crystal clear. My parents were suing me for my house, alleging that it belonged to my sister based on some supposed promise made during a family dinner 10 years ago. According to their complaint, during Christmas dinner in 2013, our parents had supposedly established a family policy giving Madison first right of refusal on any significant real estate purchases made by family members. The lawsuit claimed that I had deliberately concealed my house hunting activities to circumvent this agreement, thereby defrauding Madison of her rightful opportunity to purchase the property. Most shocking was their demand for immediate possession of the house, claiming that every day I lived there constituted ongoing theft from Madison. The legal team they'd hired was expensive: Hamilton, Price and Associates, one of the most prestigious family law firms in Northern California. Their lead attorney, Marcus Hamilton, had a reputation for winning impossible cases through aggressive tactics and media manipulation. How my unemployed parents could afford such representation was my first major question, especially since they'd always claimed to live paycheck to paycheck on my father's postal service pension and my mother's part-time secretary income. Madison had obviously been preparing for this legal battle for weeks. Her initial deposition, filed the same day as the lawsuit, painted me as a manipulative sister who had systematically excluded her from important family decisions. She claimed that I'd deliberately hidden my house search, knowing that she'd always dreamed of owning a Victorian home in wine country. According to her testimony, she'd been saving money to buy a house in the same neighborhood but had been betrayed by my secretive purchase. The media attention started almost immediately. Someone, clearly my family, had contacted local news outlets about the sister versus sister property dispute. Within days, my professional reputation was under assault. Colleagues who had congratulated me on my home purchase now avoided eye contact and whispered when I passed their desks. My supervisor called me into his office to discuss the situation, suggesting that perhaps I should consider taking a leave of absence until the legal matter was resolved. The most painful betrayal came from people I'd considered close friends. Rebecca Martinez, my roommate from college who had been maid of honor in Madison's first wedding, posted a long Facebook message supporting my sister and condemning Mike's selfish behavior. She shared intimate details about my financial struggles during college, twisting them to suggest that I'd always been money-obsessed and competitive with Madison. The post was shared hundreds of times, each share adding another layer of humiliation to my growing nightmare. My parents' manipulation campaign was sophisticated and ruthless. They'd spent weeks laying groundwork in our extended family and social circle, sharing their version of events before the lawsuit became public. Suddenly, cousins who had barely spoken to me in years were posting supportive messages for Madison and our parents. My uncle Thomas, who had borrowed $5,000 from me just 2 years earlier, gave an interview to a local blogger supporting the lawsuit and describing me as always being different from the rest of the family. The psychological warfare intensified daily. Anonymous phone calls to my workplace reported concerns about my mental stability and financial irregularities. Someone created a fake social media account posting my home address and suggesting that I was hiding assets from my family. My mailbox was vandalized twice in 1 week, and my new neighbors began looking at me with suspicion and concern. Madison's performance was Academy Award worthy. She gave tearful interviews to anyone who would listen, describing how I'd stolen her dream and left her homeless and desperate. She conveniently omitted mentioning that she was living rent-free in our parents' basement while collecting unemployment benefits she wasn't entitled to. Her social media presence became a carefully crafted narrative of victimhood, complete with throwback photos of us as children and captions about how greed changes people. The legal pressure was relentless. Hamilton's team filed motion after motion, demanding immediate access to my financial records, employment history, and even my therapy records from college. They subpoenaed my bank statements, phone records, and email accounts, searching for any evidence that I'd intentionally deceived my family. Every aspect of my private life was being dissected by strangers who were paid to destroy my credibility and reputation. My parents' ultimatum came during what they described as a family intervention at their house in July. Sitting across from me in the living room where I'd opened Christmas presents as a child, they delivered their final offer with cold calculation: transfer the house deed to Madison immediately, or face a prolonged legal battle that would destroy my career, my reputation, and my financial future. My mother's voice was steady as she explained that they had unlimited resources to continue the fight, while I was just one person against an entire family. My father added that they were prepared to pursue criminal charges if I didn't cooperate, suggesting that my house purchase involved fraudulent financial activity that could land me in prison. Desperate for answers about how my parents could afford such an expensive legal team, I hired Detective Frank Coleman, a former police investigator who specialized in financial fraud cases. Frank's preliminary research revealed information that shattered my understanding of my family's finances. My parents weren't living paycheck to paycheck as they'd always claimed. They were drowning in over $200,000 of credit card debt spread across 17 different accounts. The debt investigation uncovered a pattern of financial recklessness dating back 5 years. My parents had been using cash advances from one credit card to pay minimums on others, creating a house of cards that was rapidly collapsing. Their mortgage had been refinanced 3 times, extracting every penny of equity from their modest home. Most disturbing was the discovery that someone had been making large cash withdrawals from these accounts. Withdrawals that coincided perfectly with Madison's trips to nearby casinos. Frank's surveillance of Madison revealed the shocking truth about her unemployment claims. Far from being a struggling job seeker, she was visiting Thunder Valley Casino 3 to 4 times per week, often staying until dawn and losing thousands of dollars on high-stakes poker games. Security footage showed her arguing with pit bosses about credit extensions and being escorted from the building by security on multiple occasions. Her gambling addiction wasn't just destroying her own life, it was consuming my parents' entire financial future. The casino investigation led to even more disturbing discoveries. Madison owed significant money to several dangerous individuals connected to illegal gambling operations in Sacramento. Text messages recovered from her phone showed increasingly desperate communications with loan sharks demanding payment with interest rates approaching 50% annually. My parents hadn't just enabled her gambling addiction, they'd become financial hostages to it, forced to liquidate their retirement savings to keep her alive. Madison's ex-husband Kyle proved to be an invaluable source of information about the family's long-term manipulation strategies. During our meeting at a coffee shop in downtown Sacramento, Kyle revealed that Madison and our parents had targeted his income throughout their marriage, pressuring him to invest in a series of fraudulent get-rich-quick schemes that cost him nearly $70,000. The divorce settlement had included a clause preventing him from discussing these financial irregularities, but he was willing to testify if it would help expose the truth about my family's systematic fraud. According to Kyle, the house lawsuit was just the latest iteration of a pattern that had been developing for years. My parents had systematically manipulated family members and friends into supporting Madison financially while portraying her as a victim of circumstances beyond her control. They'd borrowed money from my grandmother before her death, promising to repay it from Madison's eventual inheritance, then used that money to cover gambling debts. When the inheritance was smaller than expected, they'd turned their attention to me as the next target for manipulation and financial exploitation. The betrayal from my Uncle Thomas cut particularly deep because I'd always considered him a secondary father figure. His deposition supporting my parents' lawsuit wasn't just misguided family loyalty, it was strategic manipulation designed to create the appearance of family consensus against me. Frank's investigation revealed that Thomas had been borrowing money from my parents for his own business ventures, creating a financial relationship that made him dependent on their goodwill and cooperation. Even more shocking was the discovery of forged documents supposedly supporting the family's legal claims. Madison had created fake emails dated from years earlier, appearing to show family discussions about property agreements that never actually occurred. She'd also manipulated old photographs and social media posts to create a false narrative about her long-standing interest in Victorian architecture and wine country real estate. The sophistication of her deception suggested months of planning and preparation. The investigation into my grandmother's will revealed another layer of family manipulation that had been hidden from me for years. My parents had pressured my grandmother into changing her will during her final illness, redirecting money that had originally been designated for my education loan repayment toward Madison's credit card debt. They'd told my grandmother that I was financially stable and didn't need assistance, while Madison was struggling with medical bills from her divorce stress. The will change had cost me $15,000 that could have significantly reduced my student loan burden. Frank's financial forensics also uncovered evidence that my parents had been using my credit information for unauthorized purposes. They'd applied for store credit cards using my address and social security number, then redirected the bills to prevent me from discovering the fraud. While they'd been making payments to avoid immediate detection, the accounts were being used to purchase items that were then sold for cash to fund Madison's gambling activities. The most devastating discovery was evidence that my parents had taken out a second mortgage on their home specifically to fund the lawsuit against me. They'd borrowed an additional $80,000 against their house, using the money to pay legal fees and support Madison's continued unemployment. This meant that winning the lawsuit wasn't just about giving Madison my house, it was about their financial survival. If they lost the case, they would lose their own home to foreclosure within months. Mrs. Chen, my elderly neighbor who had witnessed some of my family's bizarre behavior around my house, provided crucial testimony about my parents' suspicious activities in my neighborhood. She'd observed them taking photographs of my property at unusual hours and questioning neighbors about my financial situation and personal relationships. Her detailed calendar notes documented multiple instances of my family members conducting what appeared to be surveillance of my daily routines and schedule. The scope of my family's deception became clear when Frank presented his final report. This wasn't a simple disagreement about property ownership, it was an elaborate financial fraud scheme designed to transfer my assets to cover Madison's gambling debts and my parents' resulting financial crisis. They'd systematically isolated me from potential allies, manipulated community opinion against me, and weaponized the legal system to steal my life savings and financial security. The lawsuit was their last desperate attempt to avoid the consequences of years of financial irresponsibility and enabling behavior. The character assassination campaign launched by my parents was more sophisticated and vicious than anything I could have imagined. They'd spent months preparing a coordinated attack on my reputation that extended far beyond our immediate family into every aspect of my personal and professional life. The assault began with a series of carefully planted stories in our hometown social media groups, portraying me as a selfish daughter who had stolen family money to fund an extravagant lifestyle while my sister struggled with poverty and unemployment. Madison's role in this campaign was particularly cruel because she exploited our shared childhood memories to create a narrative of systematic sibling abuse. She posted detailed stories on Facebook about supposedly traumatic incidents from our youth, describing me as a bully who had always received preferential treatment from our parents. According to her fabricated accounts, I'd monopolized family resources, stolen her toys and clothes, and even prevented her from participating in school activities by convincing our parents she was irresponsible. These posts were shared widely by relatives and family friends who had no way of verifying the claims but were eager to participate in the drama. The religious community manipulation was especially painful because faith had always been an important part of my life. My parents attended St. Mary's Catholic Church, where they'd been members for over 20 years. They used their standing in the congregation to spread whispers about my supposed greed and lack of family values. The pastor, Father Miguel, was persuaded to give a sermon about the importance of supporting struggling family members, with obvious references to my situation. Several longtime family friends from the church stopped speaking to me entirely, crossing the street to avoid conversations when they saw me in public. Professional sabotage escalated when anonymous complaints were filed against me with my employer, claiming I'd used company resources for personal business and had conflicts of interest with clients. These complaints triggered an internal investigation that consumed weeks of my time and energy, forcing me to document every professional interaction and expense for the previous 2 years. While the investigation ultimately cleared me of wrongdoing, the damage to my relationships with colleagues and supervisors was significant and lasting. The social media harassment campaign was relentless and coordinated. Multiple fake accounts were created specifically to target me with comments on every post, photo, and professional update I shared. These accounts used personal information about my childhood, relationships, and career to create an appearance of grassroots community disapproval. The harassment extended to my friends' social media accounts, with trolls attacking anyone who expressed support for me or questioned the family's narrative. Madison's performance as a victim reached new heights with the creation of fake medical documentation claiming that the stress of our legal battle had caused her to develop serious health problems. She posted photos from hospital visits for supposedly stress-induced migraines, panic attacks, and digestive issues. These posts generated enormous sympathy and support from people who had no knowledge of her gambling addiction or the true source of her problems. She even started a GoFundMe campaign to help with her alleged medical expenses, raising over $8,000 from concerned friends and community members. The theatrical elements of my parents' campaign were carefully designed for maximum emotional impact. During court appearances, Madison arrived in a wheelchair pushed by my father, wearing modest clothing and minimal makeup to emphasize her supposed fragility and poverty. My mother carried a large handbag filled with tissues and medications, frequently dabbing at her eyes and supporting Madison during breaks in proceedings. These performances were photographed by sympathetic relatives and shared on social media as evidence of my family's suffering. Local media attention intensified when the story was picked up by a regional newspaper as a human interest piece about family conflict in challenging economic times. The reporter had clearly been influenced by my family's narrative, presenting the lawsuit as a David versus Goliath story with Madison as the underdog fighting against her wealthy, selfish sister. The article included carefully selected quotes from family friends supporting Madison while failing to investigate any of my claims about gambling addiction or financial fraud. Character witness intimidation became a serious concern when several of my friends reported receiving threatening phone calls and emails warning them against supporting me in the lawsuit. The messages suggested that helping me would result in retaliation against their businesses or families. My college roommate Sarah initially agreed to testify about my responsible financial behavior during school, but withdrew after her husband's small construction business suddenly faced anonymous complaints and permit challenges with the city. The psychological pressure reached a breaking point when I discovered that my parents had hired a private investigator to follow me and document my activities. Photos of my daily routine, work schedule, and social interactions were being compiled as evidence of my supposedly lavish lifestyle. The investigator had photographed me eating lunch at moderately priced restaurants and shopping at regular retail stores, but these images were being presented as evidence of excessive spending and financial irresponsibility. My near breakdown came during a particularly vicious family confrontation at my Aunt Linda's birthday party in August. Nearly 20 relatives had been invited, and I quickly realized the event was a setup designed to publicly humiliate me and pressure me into surrendering my house. One by one, family members stood up to share their opinions about my selfishness and lack of family loyalty. My cousin David read a prepared statement describing me as a disgrace to our family's values, while my uncle Thomas presented a slideshow of photos from my house, describing it as excessive and inappropriate for a single person. The evening's climax came when Madison stood up to deliver what was clearly a rehearsed speech about forgiveness and family healing. She offered to accept my house as a gesture of reconciliation, promising to allow me to visit whenever I wanted. The room erupted in applause, with family members pressuring me to accept this generous offer and restore family harmony. When I refused and attempted to explain the truth about Madison's gambling addiction, I was shouted down and accused of making desperate excuses to avoid taking responsibility for my actions. The ultimate betrayal came when my best friend Jessica, whom I'd trusted with intimate details about the lawsuit and family situation, was revealed to have been secretly recording our conversations and sharing the information with my parents. Jessica had been struggling financially with her own small business, and my parents had offered to help with her debts in exchange for inside information about my legal strategy and emotional state. Her recordings were being used to anticipate my legal moves and exploit my vulnerabilities in their campaign against me. The decision to fight back came during a sleepless night in early September when I realized that surrendering would mean losing everything I'd worked for while enabling my family's destructive behavior to continue unchecked. I contacted Diana Fletcher, one of California's most aggressive family law attorneys, known for her expertise in defending clients against financial manipulation and elder abuse. Diana's reputation for taking on powerful opponents and winning impossible cases made her exactly the advocate I needed to match my family's expensive legal team. Diana's first strategic move was filing a comprehensive countersuit that transformed the entire legal landscape. Rather than simply defending against my family's property claims, we went on the offensive with charges of defamation, harassment, fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit theft. The countersuit demanded not only dismissal of their claims but also substantial financial damages for the harm they'd caused to my reputation, career, and emotional well-being. This aggressive approach immediately shifted the power dynamics and forced my family to defend their own actions rather than simply attacking mine. The hiring of Marcus Wong, a forensic accountant specializing in financial fraud investigation, proved to be a game-changing decision. Marcus's detailed analysis of my family's finances revealed a complex web of deception that went far beyond simple overspending or poor financial decisions. His report documented systematic fraud involving identity theft, credit card manipulation, insurance fraud, and tax evasion spanning multiple years. The scope of their criminal activity was so extensive that it warranted referral to federal authorities for investigation. Marcus's discovery of Madison's hidden assets completely destroyed her claims of poverty and victimhood. While publicly claiming unemployment and financial hardship, she'd been maintaining secret bank accounts in Nevada under a slightly different name. These accounts contained over $40,000 in gambling winnings that she'd failed to report to unemployment authorities or include in her financial disclosures for the lawsuit. The hidden money proved she'd been committing fraud against multiple government agencies while portraying herself as a struggling victim. The investigation into my parents' tax situation revealed 5 years of unreported rental income from illegally subletting their basement to a series of tenants. They'd been collecting monthly rent payments of $800 while claiming financial hardship and living paycheck to paycheck. The unreported income totaled over $48,000, representing significant federal and state tax evasion that could result in criminal prosecution and substantial penalties. Digital forensics analysis of my family's electronic communications provided devastating evidence of their coordinated campaign against me. Email chains between my parents, Madison, and various relatives revealed detailed planning of their public relations strategy, including specific instructions for what to post on social media and how to coordinate their messaging. These communications also included discussions of illegal tactics, such as accessing my personal accounts and planting false evidence to support their claims. The breakthrough moment came when we discovered that my family's legal team had abandoned their case after learning about the fraud evidence we'd uncovered. Hamilton, Price and Associates quietly withdrew from representation, filing a motion citing irreconcilable differences with their clients. This withdrawal was actually prompted by their discovery that my parents had lied about their financial situation and the source of their legal fees, potentially exposing the law firm to charges of participating in fraudulent activity. Community opinion began shifting dramatically as evidence of my family's deception became public knowledge. The revelation that Madison's medical crisis was largely fabricated while she was secretly gambling away tens of thousands of dollars generated significant outrage among people who'd supported her fundraising efforts. Several community members who'd contributed to her GoFundMe campaign demanded refunds and publicly apologized for believing her manipulation without investigating the facts. Former family friends started coming forward with their own stories of manipulation and financial exploitation by my parents and Madison. Mrs. Rodriguez, our elderly neighbor from my childhood, revealed that my parents had borrowed $15,000 from her 2 years earlier for Madison's supposed medical emergency, money that had never been repaid despite repeated promises. Her testimony provided crucial evidence of my family's pattern of financial fraud targeting vulnerable community members. The security camera footage from my house proved invaluable when it captured my parents attempting to plant evidence during what they claimed was a social visit. The video showed my father placing documents in my mailbox while my mother acted as a lookout, clearly attempting to create false evidence of communication about property agreements. This footage provided concrete proof of ongoing criminal activity and demonstrated the lengths to which they were willing to go to support their fraudulent claims. Madison's gambling creditors became unexpected allies when they started pursuing legal action for her unpaid debts. These creditors had detailed records of her gambling activities, loan agreements, and payment defaults that completely contradicted her public claims of financial responsibility and victimhood. Their willingness to testify about her addiction and fraudulent behavior provided crucial third-party verification of our claims about her true character and financial situation. The FBI investigation was triggered when our financial evidence revealed potential violations of federal banking and identity theft laws. My parents' use of my personal information to obtain credit cards and their systematic manipulation of financial institutions qualified as federal crimes that could result in significant prison sentences. The federal investigation added serious criminal consequences to what had previously been treated as a civil family dispute. My cousin David's decision to switch sides and support my position created a significant crack in my family's united front. David had initially participated in their campaign against me but became disturbed by evidence of their criminal activity and the impact on elderly community members like Mrs. Rodriguez. His insider knowledge of their planning and strategy provided crucial intelligence about their future moves and helped us anticipate and counter their remaining tactics. The revelation that my parents had forged my signature on legal documents attempting to transfer my house deed represented the most serious criminal charge against them. Document analysis by handwriting experts confirmed that multiple signatures on property-related paperwork were forgeries created by my father. This evidence provided grounds for immediate criminal prosecution and demonstrated their willingness to commit serious felonies to steal my property. The FBI investigation that began in October revealed criminal activities far more extensive than anyone had imagined. Special Agent Jennifer Martinez, who specialized in family financial crimes, discovered that my parents had been operating what essentially amounted to a small-scale organized crime operation for over 3 years. Their activities included identity theft, mail fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit theft on a scale that warranted federal prosecution rather than simple civil litigation. The identity theft scheme was particularly sophisticated and had been targeting me specifically for over 2 years. My parents had been intercepting my mail, including financial statements and credit card offers, to obtain personal information needed to open accounts in my name. They'd successfully opened 6 different credit cards using my identity, carefully managing the payments to avoid immediate detection while using the credit for cash advances to fund Madison's gambling activities. The total fraudulent debt in my name exceeded $38,000. Madison's involvement in insurance fraud from her divorce proceedings added another layer of criminal activity to the family's operation. She'd filed false claims for valuable items allegedly stolen during the divorce, including jewelry that actually existed and was hidden in my parents' house. The insurance payouts totaled over $15,000 and represented felony fraud that could result in significant prison time. Insurance investigators had been building their own case against her when our lawsuit brought their investigation into the public eye. The foreclosure proceedings on my parents' house accelerated rapidly once their creditors learned about the pending criminal charges. Multiple credit card companies filed lawsuits demanding immediate payment of overdue balances, while their mortgage company initiated foreclosure procedures based on evidence of fraudulent financial statements used to obtain their refinancing loans. The house that had been their anchor for 20 years was now scheduled for auction within 60 days. The desperation that drove my parents to attempt forgery of my house deed represented their final gamble to avoid complete financial collapse. Working with a notary who was later discovered to be part of a document fraud ring, they'd attempted to create paperwork transferring ownership of my house to Madison as payment for supposedly outstanding family debts. Only the quick action of my attorney and the bank that held my mortgage prevented the fraudulent transfer from being recorded with the county. Criminal charges were filed simultaneously by federal, state, and local authorities, creating a complex web of legal proceedings that would determine my family's fate. Federal charges included identity theft, mail fraud, and conspiracy, while state charges covered forgery, fraud, and elder abuse of community members like Mrs. Rodriguez. Local authorities filed charges related to the harassment campaign and attempted burglary of my house. The combined potential prison sentences for my parents exceeded 15 years each. Madison's flight from California to Nevada represented an attempt to escape arrest warrants, but her gambling addiction made her easy to track and locate. Casino security footage from Las Vegas showed her losing money she'd stolen from her GoFundMe medical fund, providing additional evidence of fraud and demonstrating her continued illegal activity even while facing prosecution. Her arrest at Caesar's Palace made regional news and finally exposed the truth about her character to people who'd been manipulated into supporting her. The criminal associates who had been threatening me over Madison's gambling debts suddenly became cooperative witnesses when they learned about the federal investigation. Rather than face potential racketeering charges for their loan sharking operation, several individuals provided detailed testimony about Madison's gambling activities, debt accumulation, and the pressure her family had been under to pay her obligations. Their testimony corroborated our claims about the true motivation behind the property lawsuit. My parents' arrest during a scheduled court hearing created dramatic scenes that were captured by local news cameras. The sight of my elderly parents being led away in handcuffs while Madison's empty wheelchair sat abandoned in the courtroom provided a powerful visual representation of how their elaborate deception had finally collapsed. The arrest warrant included charges serious enough to require them to surrender their passports and remain under house arrest until trial. The complete financial collapse that followed their arrest was swift and devastating. All bank accounts were frozen pending investigation, their house was seized as evidence of money laundering, and their remaining assets were evaluated for potential seizure and sale to compensate their victims. The comfortable retirement they'd expected was replaced by the prospect of spending their golden years in federal prison while owing hundreds of thousands of dollars in restitution and penalties. Community outrage reached a fever pitch when the full scope of their crimes became public knowledge. People who'd been manipulated into supporting Madison and attacking me demanded accountability not just from my family but from community leaders and media outlets that had amplified their lies without investigation. Several churches and community organizations issued public apologies for their role in spreading false information and promised to implement better verification procedures for future charity cases. The newspaper that had published sympathetic coverage of Madison's supposed plight faced significant criticism for their failure to investigate basic facts about the case before publication. Their follow-up article exposing the truth generated even more attention than their original story, leading to widespread discussion about media responsibility and the importance of verifying claims in family dispute coverage. The reporter who'd written the original piece admitted to being completely deceived by my family's sophisticated manipulation. Professional consequences extended beyond my family to include their attorney and the notary who'd participated in the document fraud scheme. Marcus Hamilton faced disciplinary action from the state bar for failing to properly verify his client's financial representations and potentially participating in fraudulent legal proceedings. The notary lost her license and faced criminal charges for her role in creating false documents, while several other professionals who'd been unknowingly involved in the scheme were investigated for potential misconduct. The sentencing phase that followed their guilty pleas resulted in consequences that would reshape my family's lives permanently. My parents received 2 years of supervised probation, substantial community service requirements, and restitution obligations that would consume any income they might earn for the remainder of their lives. Madison faced 18 months in minimum security prison followed by 3 years of probation and mandatory gambling addiction treatment. The criminal records and financial judgments against them would prevent any future attempts at financial manipulation or fraud. Madison's return from Nevada in November brought with her a group of criminal associates who represented the most dangerous escalation of our family conflict. These individuals, connected to illegal gambling operations and loan sharking, had been pressuring Madison for payment of her substantial debts and saw my house as a potential solution to their collection problems. Their involvement transformed what had been a family legal dispute into a serious safety concern that required police protection and constant vigilance. The attempted kidnapping occurred on a Tuesday evening as I was leaving work later than usual. 2 men approached me in the parking garage, claiming to be process servers with legal documents, but their aggressive behavior and lack of proper identification immediately raised red flags. Thanks to self-defense training I'd taken after the harassment began, I was able to escape and call for help. Security cameras captured the entire incident, providing clear evidence of the planned attack and leading to arrest warrants for Madison's associates. My temporary relocation to a secure apartment complex across town disrupted every aspect of my carefully built life. The constant stress of looking over my shoulder, varying my daily routine, and living in fear of the next attack took a severe toll on my physical and emotional health. Sleep became nearly impossible, work performance suffered significantly, and the isolation from my normal life and support systems pushed me toward a breaking point that would have satisfied my family's goals even if their legal case failed. The prison intimidation campaign represented a new level of sophistication in my parents' psychological warfare. Through connections made during their brief jail time before bail, they arranged for inmates to make threatening phone calls to my workplace and apartment. These calls included detailed information about my daily routine and specific threats about what would happen if I didn't withdraw my legal claims and transfer my house to Madison. The prison system's investigation of these calls revealed a network of communication between my parents and other inmates that violated the terms of their bail agreement. The mounting legal bills from defending against escalating criminal threats and civil litigation consumed my life savings at an alarming rate. Diana Fletcher's excellent representation came with costs that exceeded $8,000 per month, while private security consultants, forensic experts, and investigative services added additional thousands to my monthly expenses. The financial pressure was exactly what my family had calculated, knowing that eventually I might be forced to surrender simply because I couldn't afford to continue fighting. The emotional manipulation reached its most cruel expression when my parents began sending letters claiming various medical emergencies and family crises. These letters, written in my mother's familiar handwriting, described my father's supposed heart problems, my grandmother's imaginary decline, and various other family members' fabricated health scares. Each letter included tearful pleas for reconciliation and suggestions that the stress of our legal battle was literally killing people I'd once loved. The psychological impact of these letters was devastating, even though I knew they were lies. Madison's fake suicide attempt was perhaps the most manipulative and dangerous escalation of their campaign. She was found by neighbors in her car with the engine running in a closed garage, surrounded by family photos and a rambling suicide note blaming me for destroying her life and driving her to desperation. The incident generated enormous community sympathy and media attention, with many people calling for me to end the legal proceedings to save my sister's life. Only later investigation revealed that the garage door had been deliberately left slightly open and that Madison had been texting with friends during her supposed suicide attempt. My moment of weakness came during a particularly difficult week when the combination of financial pressure, physical exhaustion, and emotional manipulation nearly broke my resolve. Diana Fletcher had been pressured to withdraw from my case due to anonymous threats against her family, leaving me temporarily without legal representation. The settlement offer that arrived during this vulnerable period seemed almost reasonable. I would transfer the house to Madison in exchange for dismissal of all claims and a promise to end the harassment. For 48 hours, I seriously considered accepting defeat and starting over somewhere else with whatever remained of my life and finances. The betrayal by my attorney represented the lowest point in my fight for justice and nearly resulted in complete defeat. Diana Fletcher's decision to withdraw from my case came after her husband's small accounting firm suddenly faced an IRS audit, her daughter's college application was mysteriously delayed, and her elderly mother received threatening phone calls at her nursing home. The coordination of these attacks against Diana's family demonstrated the reach and ruthlessness of my family's criminal network and their willingness to target innocent people to achieve their goals. Representing myself in court proceedings while dealing with ongoing criminal threats proved to be an overwhelming challenge that nearly resulted in legal defeat. Without professional legal guidance, I struggled to file proper motions, respond to procedural requirements, and present evidence in formats acceptable to the court. My family's experienced legal team took advantage of my inexperience to file complex motions designed to confuse and overwhelm me, hoping to force procedural errors that would damage my case. The federal investigation into my legitimate business activities represented the most serious threat to my professional reputation and career prospects. Anonymous complaints to the SEC and IRS suggested that my house purchase involved money laundering or other financial crimes, triggering investigations that consumed months of time and thousands of dollars in accounting and legal fees. While these investigations ultimately cleared me of any wrongdoing, the damage to my professional relationships and career advancement was significant and lasting. The pressure from my employer to resolve the situation or face termination created an impossible choice between my career and my principles. Morrison and Associates made it clear that the ongoing media attention, criminal investigations, and workplace disruptions were affecting their ability to serve clients and maintain their reputation. The suggestion that I take an extended leave of absence or consider resignation was presented as a temporary solution, but I knew that leaving would effectively end my career in the industry and provide my family with exactly the victory they sought. My darkest moment came during a particularly vicious confrontation outside the courthouse when Madison's criminal associates surrounded me while news cameras recorded the scene. They demanded immediate payment of her gambling debts and suggested that my house would be seized to satisfy their claims regardless of any court decisions. The public nature of this intimidation, combined with my parents' apparent approval and encouragement of their tactics, made me realize that winning the legal case might not be enough to end the danger and harassment that had consumed my life. The climactic court hearing in early December brought together all the threads of evidence, testimony, and legal maneuvering that had consumed nearly a year of my life. Judge Patricia Morrison, known for her no-nonsense approach to family law cases, had clearly done her homework and was prepared to address not just the property dispute but the broader pattern of criminal behavior that had emerged during the proceedings. The packed courtroom included family members, community supporters, media representatives, and law enforcement officials who were there to ensure Madison's criminal associates couldn't disrupt the proceedings. Madison's creditors chose the most dramatic possible moment to make their appearance, storming into the courthouse during opening statements to demand immediate satisfaction of her gambling debts. Led by a professional debt collection agency that had been monitoring the case, they presented documentation showing that Madison owed over $60,000 to various gambling establishments and individuals. Their timing was clearly calculated to maximize the impact on the judge and demonstrate the real motivation behind my family's desperate legal maneuvering. My parents' complete breakdown under cross-examination provided the most devastating testimony of the entire proceedings. Under oath and facing potential perjury charges for any false statements, they were forced to acknowledge the extensive lies they'd told about their financial situation, Madison's condition, and the supposed family property agreements. My father's confession that he'd forged my signature on multiple documents was particularly damaging, while my mother's admission that they'd been using my credit identity for unauthorized purchases destroyed any remaining credibility they might have maintained. Judge Morrison's harsh condemnation of my parents' behavior echoed throughout the courtroom and provided a powerful validation of everything I'd endured during the long legal battle. Her statement that she'd rarely seen such a systematic campaign of fraud, manipulation, and abuse within a single family was picked up by news outlets and shared widely on social media. Her description of their actions as morally reprehensible and legally inexcusable provided the kind of official recognition of their wrongdoing that helped restore my reputation in the community. The criminal contempt charges for their continued harassment during the legal proceedings added immediate consequences to their already serious legal troubles. Evidence of their prison intimidation campaign, threats against my attorney, and coordination with criminal associates violated multiple court orders and bail conditions. Judge Morrison's decision to revoke their bail and order immediate custody sent a clear message that the court system wouldn't tolerate continued criminal behavior during civil proceedings. My testimony about years of family manipulation and financial abuse provided a detailed account of their systematic campaign to control and exploit me. Standing at the witness stand and recounting specific incidents of emotional manipulation, financial fraud, and psychological abuse was both terrifying and liberating. The opportunity to speak my truth in an official forum, protected by court procedures and supported by extensive evidence, allowed me to finally confront the people who had caused so much damage to my life and reputation. The character witnesses who finally found the courage to support me publicly provided crucial testimony that corroborated my claims about my family's long-term pattern of manipulation and abuse. Mrs. Rodriguez's account of their financial exploitation of elderly community members, Kyle's testimony about their manipulation during Madison's marriage, and several former friends' descriptions of their systematic lying demonstrated that my experience was part of a broader pattern of harmful behavior targeting multiple victims. Madison's arrest during the court proceedings for outstanding warrants related to her fraud and gambling activities provided a fitting conclusion to her role in the legal drama. Her removal from the courtroom in handcuffs while her supposed medical equipment sat abandoned demonstrated the complete falsity of her victim narrative and vindicated my claims about her true character and criminal behavior. The court's final ruling was more comprehensive and favorable than I had dared to hope. Judge Morrison not only confirmed my complete ownership of the house but also awarded substantial damages for defamation, harassment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The monetary judgment against my parents and Madison totaled over $120,000, representing compensation for my legal fees, lost wages, and emotional suffering during their campaign against me. The restraining orders issued against all family members provided legal protection that would prevent future harassment and intimidation. The orders included specific prohibitions against contact through third parties, social media harassment, and any attempts to interfere with my professional or personal relationships. Violation of these orders would result in immediate arrest and additional criminal charges, providing meaningful deterrent against future manipulation attempts. My parents' forced sale of their house to pay legal fees and restitution created poetic justice that reflected the consequences of their own choices and actions. The foreclosure proceedings that had been delayed pending the lawsuit outcome were accelerated once their criminal convictions became final. The house that had been their refuge and base of operations for their criminal activities was now being sold to compensate their victims and satisfy their legal obligations. The public confession required as part of their plea agreement provided official acknowledgement of their wrongdoing that helped repair the damage to my reputation in the community. Their written statement, published in the local newspaper, admitted to the systematic lies they'd spread about me and acknowledged that their claims about property agreements and family dynamics had been completely fabricated. This public accountability was crucial for restoring my standing with people who had been deceived by their manipulation campaign. The community support rally organized by neighbors and friends provided a powerful demonstration of how public opinion had shifted once the truth about my family's behavior became clear. Over 200 people gathered outside the courthouse to express their support for me and their outrage at how I'd been treated. The event generated positive media coverage that helped counteract months of negative publicity and provided emotional validation that meant more than any legal victory. 6 months after the final court ruling, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined during the darkest days of my family's legal assault. The Victorian house that had been the center of so much conflict had become a true sanctuary where I could heal from the trauma and rebuild my sense of security and peace. Each room that I renovated and decorated represented another step away from the chaos and manipulation that had defined my family relationships for so many years. The house renovation process became therapeutic in ways that surprised me, allowing me to literally rebuild my living space while metaphorically reconstructing my emotional and psychological foundation. Stripping away layers of old wallpaper felt like removing the lies and manipulation that had covered my true family relationships, while installing new flooring represented the solid ground I was creating for my future. Every improvement I made with my own hands reinforced my ownership and independence, creating a physical manifestation of my victory over those who had tried to steal my dreams and achievements. The relationships I formed with my neighbors and new friends proved that authentic connections based on honesty and mutual respect were possible, even after experiencing such profound betrayal from the people who should have been closest to me. Mrs. Chen became like a surrogate grandmother, sharing meals and stories while providing the kind of unconditional support that my biological family had never offered. The Martinez family next door included me in their holiday celebrations and treated me like the daughter they'd always wanted, demonstrating what healthy family dynamics actually looked like. My parents' completion of community service and mandatory counseling represented their first steps toward acknowledging the harm they'd caused, though their progress toward genuine remorse remained questionable. Their court-ordered therapy sessions focused on financial responsibility, family boundaries, and the impact of enabling behavior on addicted family members. While I had no direct contact with them due to the restraining orders, reports from their probation officers suggested that they were beginning to understand the connection between their actions and the devastating consequences for multiple family members and community members. Madison's time in minimum security prison and mandatory gambling addiction treatment offered the first real hope for her recovery in many years. The structured environment, combined with intensive therapy and complete separation from enabling family members, allowed her to confront her addiction honestly for the first time. Her letters of apology, written as part of her treatment program, demonstrated genuine remorse and understanding of how her behavior had hurt everyone around her. While I wasn't ready to forgive or rebuild our relationship, her progress suggested that redemption might be possible with sustained effort and accountability. The professional success that followed my legal victory exceeded anything I had achieved before the family crisis began. Morrison & Associates not only retained me but offered a promotion to senior account manager, recognizing that my handling of the legal and media challenges demonstrated exactly the kind of crisis management skills their clients needed. The publicity from my case, while initially negative, ultimately showcased my integrity and resilience in ways that attracted new clients who wanted to work with someone they could trust under pressure. My decision to start my own marketing consultancy represented the ultimate expression of independence and confidence that had grown from surviving my family's attacks. The business plan I developed focused on helping small businesses and nonprofit organizations tell their authentic stories, drawing on my hard-earned expertise in recognizing and countering manipulation and false narratives. The irony that my family's lies and deception had prepared me to help others communicate truthfully was not lost on me. The healing journey through therapy helped me process the complex trauma of family betrayal while developing healthy boundaries and relationship skills that would protect me in the future. Dr. Sarah Williams, my therapist, specialized in family estrangement and financial abuse, providing crucial guidance for understanding that choosing to cut contact with toxic family members was an act of self-preservation rather than selfishness. Learning to trust my own perceptions and judgments after years of gaslighting and manipulation was perhaps the most important skill I developed during recovery. My romantic relationship with David Chen, the attorney who had provided crucial support during my legal battle, developed slowly and carefully as I learned to trust again after such profound betrayal. David's patient understanding of my need for emotional healing, combined with his own experience with family conflict and his immigration law practice, created a foundation for genuine partnership based on mutual respect and shared values. Our relationship proved that love could flourish even after experiencing the worst that family relationships could offer. The support group I established for victims of family financial abuse filled a crucial gap in community resources while providing ongoing purpose and meaning to my own recovery. Meeting weekly in my beautifully renovated living room, the group brought together people who had experienced similar betrayals from family members, romantic partners, and trusted friends. Sharing our stories and strategies for healing created a chosen family of survivors who understood the unique challenges of recovering from intimate betrayal and financial exploitation. My house had truly become a symbol of independence, strength, and authentic success rather than the symbol of selfishness and greed my family had tried to make it represent. The wraparound porch where I drank morning coffee while watching sunrise over the vineyard represented the peace I'd fought so hard to achieve. The kitchen where I cooked meals for friends and support group members demonstrated the nurturing relationships I'd built to replace the toxic dynamics of my biological family. Every room reflected my values, choices, and authentic self rather than the distorted image my family had tried to create. The lessons I learned about recognizing manipulation, setting boundaries, and prioritizing my own well-being over family loyalty created a foundation for all my future relationships and decisions. Understanding that family membership doesn't automatically grant unlimited access to my time, money, or emotional energy was perhaps the most important insight I gained from the entire experience. Learning to value my own peace and security over others' approval or acceptance allowed me to make choices based on my authentic needs rather than inherited obligations or social expectations. When my parents made a final attempt at reconciliation through a mutual friend in the spring, my decision to maintain no contact felt clear and peaceful rather than angry or vindictive. Their message expressing regret for their actions and desire to rebuild our relationship couldn't overcome the years of systematic manipulation and the knowledge that their apology was prompted by loneliness and consequences rather than genuine remorse. Choosing to prioritize my own healing over their comfort represented the kind of healthy selfishness that I'd never been allowed to practice during my childhood and young adulthood. The future I was building felt bright with possibilities that were entirely my own creation rather than extensions of family expectations or manipulations. Plans for expanding my consulting business, traveling to places I'd always wanted to see, and continuing to cultivate authentic relationships filled me with excitement rather than the anxiety that had characterized so much of my earlier life. The house that had been a battleground was now a launching pad for adventures and achievements that reflected my true interests and values. As I sit on my front porch this evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and purple, I'm filled with gratitude for the journey that brought me to this place of peace and authenticity. The legal battle that seemed like it would destroy my life ultimately freed me from toxic relationships and revealed strengths I never knew I possessed. While I wouldn't wish the experience of family betrayal on anyone, I can honestly say that surviving it made me a stronger, wiser, and more compassionate person. My story serves as a reminder that sometimes the people who are supposed to love us unconditionally are the ones who cause the most damage to our lives and dreams. It took tremendous courage to stand up to my family's manipulation and fight for what was rightfully mine, but the victory was worth every difficult moment. If you're facing similar challenges with toxic family members or anyone trying to steal your dreams, remember that you have the right to protect your peace, your achievements, and your future from people who would destroy them for their own benefit. What would you do if your own family took you to court to steal your dream home? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's struggling with similar challenges. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family drama and building authentic, peaceful lives. Don't forget to share this with anyone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves against manipulation and abuse. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember that you deserve relationships that celebrate your success rather than trying to steal it from you.